Okay, what I'm going to show you first, I want to show about maybe 5 or 6 slides, and then we're going to get into what I want to present for the day. But I always want to show just a little bit in front, because I saw when Rod asked the first hour, how many people here are here for the first time? Let me see those hands again. Yeah, it's quite a few. So I want to clarify just a couple of things. But before that, I want to show you the Ohio Archaeology Society in action. This is the Miamisburg Adena Mound, Miamisburg, Ohio. Now, to ask all of you out here, if you were given the job to take weeds and brush off this mound, just think about it. How would you do it? How many people would it take? Any kind of mechanism, some type of brush machine or mower, whatever. If you see this arrow, a little white sign where that arrow is pointing at, that says, keep off the mounds. Now, when you go through Ohio, you will see this all the time. The mounds are sacred. The mounds are this. Don't walk on the mounds. No pictures on the mounds. Stay off the mounds. Okay? Have you guys seen those signs in Ohio? Yes. Well, prepare to be amazed. Here's how the Ohio Archaeology clears the brush off the Adena Mound in Miamisburg. And they tell me I'm crazy. You know what's really bad about this? This is the middle of summer. If these guys would have had a real downpour of rain, they would have had gullies all over this earthwork running down to the bottom, because they've taken the grass and the sod off as well, not just the brush. That should never happen. They do this, I understand, I found out, about every 4 years. So I just want to show you the kind of stuff we're up against, okay? Anyway, for our new people, and for those of you for review, we're here because we're talking about these two massive theories, 2 hills or 1. So I want to just go through this. I've shown this before. Here's the Mesoamerica, and that nice red circle. It's approximately 1,000 square miles. That is the Mesoamerica model. Now, good men and women in the church, respecting the academics who support Mesoamerica, they took that 1,000 square model and they dropped it around Cumorah in New York and took in Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. And then they said the entire Book of Mormon would take place within that red circle. And right away they were attacked from the Meso guys because the contextual material for a major nation of people in that red circle at Erie and Lake Ontario begins about 100 AD. Well, what happens to the next 600-700 years back? You see, there's no record. So it doesn't work. But what does work is you have to go big. You have to take in everything. And Joseph backs this up in all his statements that have been passed over, which is unfortunate. And of course, this is our Hopewell mound builders, 550 BC to 400 AD, which is awesome. And these are the typical enclosures you'll see. The one on the top left, that is a typical hill fort. They run anywhere from 200 to 600 feet to walk to the top. The geometric earthworks, they're also plentiful, but not as plentiful as the small ones, which is to the left. But I want you to focus on the parallels. Look at the dates here. The top one is our Book of Mormon dates. 600 BC, 385 is the war. It's over for the Nephite society. And 421, Moroni says goodbye. But look at the dates on the bottom. The dates on the bottom are provided by our non-LDS scholars in the Midwest. I mean, we can't ask for anything better except for Moroni to show up and fix everything, okay? I mean, these dates are right on. They're spot on. And that's why I stick with the Hopewell people. But today, I've had people ask us, Wayne, if you had a limited amount of time and you could only show a few things to a person, where would you spend your time? And this is what I call a quick start to Cumorah in North America. I would show them the mound builder forts that we read about that match the Book of Alma, starting at 48 and going through 62. That's where I would go. Because you can go there, you can see a few in Iowa, a few in Illinois, A few more in Indiana, and you see a whole bunch in Ohio. And you can see them in New York. You can walk these things. It's all there. There is nowhere in the Western Hemisphere that will match Alma 48 to 62 except the Midwest of the United States. And then I follow linguistics and script. I find that extremely important. There was a time when pottery and arrowheads and that type of thing led the way, but not anymore. Today, linguistics, if they can be discovered, will lead the way to identify that particular culture at that dig site. And the second one behind is the actual geology. If we could have had archaeologists and geologists working side by side since the 1890s, I can guarantee you we'd have a whole different outlook today. The geologists play a major, major role, and they have just come to realize how important they are in the archaeological community. A very slow start indeed. And then, of course, what did Joseph actually know? And what did Joseph leave us? And he left us plenty. So what I did here, this is what I call the Book of Alma, my big 8. He talks about banks of earth, walls of stone, place of resort. That's a hilltop to run up to. Place of entrance. They designed that on purpose to make them fight at one spot. Ditches, deep ditches. Towers erected every so often along these berms of earth. Entire timbers built to the height of a man. We know that because of the post molds that we're going to look at, we've uncovered, and the Lamanites east and Nephites west. Now that was a real struggle for me. I did not understand this one for a long time, but we'll get to it eventually. And here are the actual scriptures. Alma 48:8. Yea, Moroni had been erecting small forts or places of resort, throwing up banks of earth round about his armies, building walls of stone. Alma 49:18, and the depth of the ditch which had been dug round about. Alma 49:20. And thus they were prepared to smite down all who should attempt to come into their place of security by place of entrance. Alma 50:2-4, upon the top of these ridges of earth he caused there should be timbers built to the height of a man, and he caused towers to be erected. And then this is the one that was so difficult. Moroni came upon the top of the wall to spy out in what part of the city the Lamanites did camp. They were on the east by the entrance, the place of entrance to be more exact. Moroni caused that they should let themselves down into that part of the city, yea, even on the west. Thus, when the morning came, they would all be within the walls of the same city. Holy mackerel. How do you get two opposing armies in the same city undetected? That's what was on my mind all this time. And I'm going to show you how that comes to pass when we get there. Okay? So, very quickly, I've got a lot of slides here and I want to step through them. Here's your typical ditch. I've shown this probably 100 times. You can't appreciate it unless you walk down in the ditch for scale. These ditches are huge. They had to be dug by large populations. No 10 or 12 families did this, and they're all over the place. And here's the Great Circle. This is in Newark. Another one. Now, this is on the inside, but I will show you a forge where the ditches are on the outside. You don't see many of those. This one here is kind of fun. Rod called me up about 2 years back, and he says, "Hey, Wayne, we found a new fort." I said, "Where?" He says, by the Kirtland Temple. And I was excited because I only had one Hopewell fort by Kirtland. And I was really excited. And so Rod sends me this photograph right here, Indian Point. And of course, I'm reading the sign, and as you read it right down there, it's called the Lyman Hill Fort site. You see, this is another trick the guys play. The new guys think they have to go around and change all the names from the old guys. I don't know why they do that. This is the Lyman Hill Fort. It's Nephite, it's Hopewell, it's their timeline. And they keep changing the dates all the time. Let's take a quick look at it. This right here would be their escape side going down. This would be the sharp end off the bottom of that green tip. They would approach from the top, and you can see the black that faces the red arrow, that is the ditch. The brown is the berm. So they've got two lines of defense, and this is extremely steep. And you think, well, why didn't they just go around? Because in their day, the waters were higher. That much higher. There's the water around the fort. So you see they had the two front walls to defend. They had the back one. Now that very last one, that has been removed by the Park Service. It's been entirely rubbed out. And that's their escape route by boat. If the two walls should fail, they got a place to go. Here's what they look like today. You can see the ditch on the left. Lovely berms, nice and high. They come from that direction, and there they are. With Photoshop, I've dropped in a wall right on the berm. That's the wall. And here's the second one. Again, a lovely ditch, lovely berm. Here they come, and there's your wall. Okay? Walls on the inside, and ditches on the outside. And then we've got, of course, these Liberty earthworks. This is a geometric. The geometrics are very special because it shows us that this people were not just a Stone Age people. They understood high math. They understood geometry, surveying. They could go and build these any place they wanted to, and they could duplicate these structures. Here's an example of size at the Liberty earthwork. 12 feet high, 50 foot wide, and extended 2/3 of a mile on all four sides. That's just the square. That's not talking about the circle and the rest of the city. These things are huge. Think of that passage in 62:3 about the large city. We'll get there. And I love this guy, Robert Riordan. He is the first guy, really the first guy, that went after the earthworks and started looking at the berms, the walls, the doorways, looking for evidence, trying to find out when were these things built, what were they used for. And he finds out that the enclosure itself was circular, built upon a stockade of burned, sturdy logs. They had a fight here at this one, Robert Riordan. And this is Pollock. This has never been plowed. This has never been messed up by a city next door. And this is one of the places I stop on our tour. It can be messy. It can be swampy. It can be mosquito-y. But you're going to see one in the rough, and it's worth it. So right here, there's your actual size of the waterway. Today, it's just the one creek on the top side. This is the approach. Those are your redoubts, the military, and there's a slight climb to get to that next wall, to get up on top. And right there, that is their escape hatch. We know this because we could tell there's a doorway there at one time. And what are they going to escape to if they could surround them? Well, the point is, water is the question. There's your water. You see, this is the way it was when they built it. And they can escape by boat, by canoe, raft, whatever, out the back door if that front should fall. And this is what Pollock looks like today. If you walk there, you can see the berms are set back into the brush. This front area had flat limestone laid, so in inclement weather, they could walk on dry ground to get inside of the fort, not walking through mud. That's the whole thing there. Here I am. I'm standing in the doorway. You can appreciate the size of the mounds. They're absolutely really good shape. They've never been bothered. And again, here's another shot. You can see how big they are. And where I'm standing, there would have been a wooden stockade going along the wall. And of course, with the use of Photoshop, I have taken the liberty to drop in what it might have looked like. And there's your stockade. The only thing here that's really a question is the gate. We do not know what the gates look like. But the towers, we can map out the square area because of post molds, and we can follow the wall across the top of the berm because of post molds in the ground. Here's another one for West Virginia. I want to get around and show you this. This is actually the very first Hopewell site that was looked at, but they did not keep the records. The records disappeared. But this was the very first one. Again, notice the size of the water area right there. Okay, you back up. See the size? It makes a difference when you drop in the water. That's where they were at. And then I show that one there side by side so you can see it. That's the difference. The waters were so much deeper then and fast flowing. And the Book of Mormon tells us they built boats and ships and they used them for commercialization. And you have to ask yourself, how did Hagar know how to build a boat coming out of Zarahemla? Boat technology came with them, and I'm going to say especially from the Mulekites, and it stayed there because he came out of Zarahemla when he decided to make his departure. Okay? Fort Ancient, this is a very, very large, it's almost 4 miles around. It's a very big one. We're going to look at 55A, which is the gate. This is divided into 3 parts. The furthest one to the top is the north area. The connector, they call that the middle fort, and what we're looking at here in the foreground is the southern fort. We had Connolly and Pentecost. They came in, and they did the work. They went to the 3 areas of the fort, and they took apart one section of wall to look for post molds. Now, back in 1946, A guy by the name of Richard Morgan had taken apart that same wall where 31 is marked. And here's his photo. And he's showing the post molds that they existed. And they wanted to validate his work, and that's what they did. The post molds were there. Wall 31, 58, 81, 84-1, based on the soil descriptions of the circular stains, the features were very likely are post molds. Based on the available data, a plausible supposition is that a palisade-type structure was in place in the early construction sequence of embankment wall 31 and 58. These sections of the embankment walls contain the earliest significant evidence of a post structure associated with Fort Ancient embankment walls. Finally, the wall 31, 58, 84-1 excavation contains evidence of a posted structure associated with the Fort Ancient embankment walls. For those of you who have gone on a tour, whether with myself or with Rod or with Bruce Porter, if you've taken the time to go in and talk to Jack, the curator, and I really like Jack a lot, but he will tell you there are no posts on the wall. He said this is just a sacred center. He'll also tell you that 10 families built this. Pretty incredible. Pretty incredible. This is another diamond in the rough, Spruce Hill. We were successful about 10 years ago. We raised $350,000, and the very top of it has now been purchased by the Ark of Appalachia. And we're trying to get this recognized by the World Heritage Center because this thing is so perfect. It has been plowed a couple times for a cornfield on the flat, but basically it's all there. And we know that because of Greenman's work. He also found evidence of a posted structure having been burned on the walls going back to Book of Mormon timelines. And then we got Fort Ancient. This is the 55A that I showed you. I wanted to show you this. This was covered with limestone slabs all the way across. There would have been wooden towers on the two large bumps, and then you can see the raised ramp to go in. And I redid it in Photoshop so you can get a good idea of what it looked like. And then I've got them set here side by side. There they are. Again, the only thing here in question really is the gate. Otherwise, it's pretty close. Staying with Fort Ancient, this is really good. The interior house cluster, which is the yellow star up on the very tip top, Connolly and Essen Press went up there and they went after all kinds of what looked like possible habitation sites. Now again, going to this place, Jack Blozier, he's the curator, he will tell you nobody lived in Fort Ancient until 1300 AD. And it was just simply like a church. And I talked to several guys, you know, and whenever they have an enclosure and they don't know what it was for, it's automatically a sacred site. And I told Dr. Lepper, which he wasn't too thrilled about, but I told him, I said, you know what, if all these places are sacred centers, I said, the Hopewell have built more churches than the LDS people. And he didn't think that was too funny. That's okay. Here is the report from Essen Press and Connolly. Look at the dates at the very, very top. Just look at that. 390 BC. They've got evidence of houses. And that evidence lasts all the way down to 380 AD. Now, why are they able to do this work, and why can't the Lepper do this work? Because these guys are not Ohio archaeologists. Fort Ancient is not owned by the state of Ohio. It's privately owned. And Connolly somehow got permission to come in there and do work for about 4 or 5 summers. And he published this very embarrassing work to the Dean of the Ohio Archaeological Society. You know, I don't know why they cover this up, brothers and sisters. I don't know. I've seen this for 27 years, and I still today, I can't give you an answer. But they refuse to take all the information that's laid before them. So there it is, House Cluster, Fort Ancient. Now we'll jump down to Tennessee. I want to show you this one. It's really, really neat. Tennessee has a few enclosures. Again, this one is surrounded by water. It's the Duck River. The stone structure in the front, this is what the berms look like today. They're so covered with trees, photograph doesn't do them justice, so they have this drawing there at the museum, which I've got, obviously, a photo of. But they'll tell you the stone walls were stacked up, dry masonry, not just in a pile. And the towers were round. I mean, this is like some kind of medieval-looking castle. But on the stone walls, they also had inserted wooden posts to make them even higher. And to demonstrate that, right here, look at the dates. There's your posts. 30 AD, 230 AD, 430 AD. Book of Mormon timeline. Tennessee, stone fort. If you're ever traveling there, head to Florida, and you're going to Nashville first. When you roll out of Nashville, head up for Florida. It's Interstate 25. You'll see a big, big sign for the stone fort at Manchester, Tennessee. And you can drop in and see it. This right here, Alma 49 and 20, this is regarding the place of entrance. And this is one of the very best. Captain Moroni designed this. It worked for many, many years. It forced them to fight. The red guys are the attackers. The blue guys are the defenders. The red guys approach. They can't get over the wall. They can't go through the ditch. So they only go to the opening, which is what? It's a squeeze. And when you squeeze down, you get dense people. You get thicker targets, okay? As it gets dense, you just start shooting into that crowd. You don't care. Just shoot into the crowd. You're going to hurt people. And they come in there. Now they're in a crossfire for all you military guys. They're definitely in a crossfire. And the guys, if they can survive this and make it all the way to here, then they're going to meet a fresh army on the inside that's going to block those doorways. And now you have a fish in the barrel taking place. Killing field, designed by Captain Moroni. And this is demonstrated in Ohio. Okay? Now, this is the big one. This is the fight for Nephi, and this is the one that caused me so much trouble. I did not understand. How can an army beat one army out of this city, and then they camp by the place of entrance, and during the night, the army they pushed out now comes back over the western walls, and they get let down by ropes into that city, and they sleep there all night while the enemy sleeps at the place of entrance. And in the morning, aha, here they come. They're on the backside, and the enemy runs out the gate because they got surprised. How big are these cities? I'm going to show you Newark. This is Newark, the Great Octagon, and way up there on the top is the Great Circle. Right there. As a crow would fly, that's 2 miles. And yet this whole thing is encircled with exterior walls, giving us a 4-mile circumference. These cities were large, larger than we really anticipated. And this next one I'm going to show you is for scale, just for scale, so you can appreciate a comparison, because you'll understand these. This is Sipe. Some people pronounce it Seep, Sipe or Seep. This is their site. The red represents the walls on the outside. I'm going to take and drop in the Pyramid of Giza. Okay? There it is. That's the Pyramid of Giza. And then here comes Stonehenge. Here comes the Roman Colosseum. And just for heck, we'll throw in the Statue of Liberty. Can you appreciate the size that we're talking about here? Hundreds of acres, miles of circumference. Huge, huge places. And this demonstrates by seeing just a few of them, no matter where they went with the geometric earthworks, they could still make a perfect circle, they could make a square, and they're the same size as the ones they just came from. Geometry, surveying. This is not a Stone Age culture. These people understand math. And this one right here really messes up the archaeologists because they don't know what to do with it. But Governor Laconius, of course, he's got great trouble. Gadiantons now have fielded an army. They're beating the Lamanites. They're beating the Nephites in open conflict. They're not sleuthing around at night anymore. They're taking them on in the daytime. And so the governor says, we're going to go to the center of our land. He invites the Lamanites to join him. What they did or they didn't know, we really don't know. But anyway, they went to the center of the land. Right here in the center of bottom tip of Illinois, we have 41 hilltop forts going all the way across from the Mississippi to the Ohio River. I have been to 15, so I know they're there. And the reason I've got the 41 because I've talked to the Department of Natural Resources of Illinois, and they have them marked. They know where they are. And they're very difficult to get to, especially if they're on private property. This is a typical example. When you go up to War Bluff, which this is, you'll see this big pile of stone, and it goes all the way across the opening. That opening is a gradual incline going up, but going up fast. And it's so steep on the left, the right, and the back end, they do not need to put walls around there at all. Okay? That's the way in, but there's no door. That's the mysterious part. There is no door. And that was troubling until I got to see the backside, and I realized that these things were so steep, they don't have to worry about it, but why is there no door? Now, that War Bluff on the right, can you see my buddy Dave? You appreciate how big these things are? 41 of these going across to Illinois. And the dating on this is 50 A.D. Governor Laconia says 16 A.D. And I'll take that. That's close enough for dating, all right? So the dating is correct. And we're in the center. We're in the center. Excuse me, I got the Davis Center again. There we go. This is the back door. It goes from that high point where Dave was standing. It comes right out where he was, and it's 1 man wide all the way down from the top. Just 1 man. How easy would it be for women and children to plug that gap if they had to? No problem. Nobody's going to get up there unless they come across that wall. They're not going to get up there. Very, very, very safe. The early pioneers that moved into Illinois, when they found these places, they used them for cattle corrals. They put their cattle in there. You don't have to worry about it because of the edges. Some of these are as much as 50 and 60 acres in size on the top. So, Book of Alma, that's our big 8. Banks of earth, walls of stone, place of resort, place of entrance, depth of ditch, towers to be erected, timbers height of a man, and Lamanites east, Nephites west. That's a very, very large cities. What I've just shown you exists nowhere else in the Western Hemisphere. Nowhere. But it matches Alma pretty darn good. So with that in mind, let's go to number 2, linguistics and script. And this one is a lot of fun. Now, Brian Stubbs, he was here last time I was here last spring. I haven't seen him yet today. But he has worked on this. Let's take a look at this. He said, if enough of it has been preserved to be demonstrated linguistically, then language is among the strongest kinds of evidence. Language families cannot be fabricated. Written records unearthed in the Americas are often labeled hoaxes, but language titles, when apparent, show specific ties from ancient to modern times, and the thousands of speakers of the related languages are beyond fabrication. Yay, Professor Stubbs. And again, this is where archaeology is going today. This is really taking the lead along with the geology. And then we have a non-LDS guy, which I've shown this before, Charlie Mann. Glottochronology's attempt to estimate how long ago 2 languages separated from a common ancestor by evaluating their degree of divergence on a list of key words. Linguists applied this technique to the Algonquin dictionaries compiled by early colonists. That results indicated that the various Algonquian languages in New England all date back to a common ancestor that appeared in the Northeast a few centuries before Christ. Is that awesome or what? This guy hasn't even read the Book of Mormon. Okay? The ancestral language may derive from what is known as the Hopewell Culture. Spot on. Now, I know you've seen this many times, but it probably hasn't connected. Look at the Old Testament names. They all end in Isaiah, Noah, Terah, Look at your Book of Mormon names. Mosiah, Zarahemnah, Amalekiah, Nephiah, Have you noticed that before reading your book? This is what Stubbs is talking about. This is what Charles Mann is talking about. This does not lie. And then we get the names of Native American chiefs in the East. I'm not going to pronounce these names, forget it. But they all end in A-H. This is rock solid evidence. Rock solid. Ryan Fisher found this one. This is a dictionary, that's the cover. Ripley Ancome, which you're all familiar with. Waters that exceed all. There's that R.I.P. But in this book, you'll find the Algonquins' name for river and for lake also all begin with R.I.P. What do you think? Kind of neat, huh? Language. And for those of you, probably most of you here are probably okay. If you took out your temple endowments after 79, this probably won't make any sense to you. See the special words? These words are still spoken today in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. They're Ojibwa. Some of them are even down in Tennessee with the Choctaw and the Cree. And we know these words. We now use English. Okay? And this one here, this is one of my favorites. This has nothing to do with linguistics, but I have to show it. I just love this picture. Do we see what the traveler is doing, the frontiersman? Everybody looking close? Do you see what he's doing? Yes? No? You got it. Okay. You see, when he met the chief, maybe a year ago, maybe 18 months ago, when he first met him, he raised his right arm to the square, and he says, "Aho." A-H-O. Aho. It means I come in peace, I bear no arms. If the chief likes this fellow and they get on, he gives him this sign. That way, when he comes back, if the chief is gone to doing business or on a hunting party, whoever his second in command is of the tribe, he makes this sign, and that will tell the guy that the chief has replaced in charge, that this guy has already been introduced to the tribe and that he is a friend, and he and his companions can stay there and enjoy their hospitality. Isn't that neat? Signs of the Great Lakes. All right. What did Joseph know? This is very, very important. As you dive into the old books, as you dive even into the history of the church, you will see oftentimes they talk about the Lamanites in the West. And I know a lot of people have misunderstood what West stands for. It is not California or Colorado or Montana. It's not west of the Mississippi. West in pre-Joseph Smith's days of 1830 and during his time, if they said west, they're talking about the Ohio. Everything west of the Appalachian Mountains was called the Ohio Territory, and that was the westernmost lands. And that didn't change until the territory became ours on the other side of the Mississippi. So the West becomes very important. And then here we have Doctrine and Covenants 32 and History of the Church, Volume 1, 118 through 120. Joseph Smith sends Oliver Cowdery, Parley Pratt, Zebed Peterson, Peter Whitmer Jr. to preach the gospel to the Lamanites residing in the West, revealing to them the sacred book with the history of their forefathers. And who are these guys? Where are they? New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. These are the Lamanites. These are Algonquins who have all the language traits we just talked about. February 12, 1833, Seton, editor, Rochester newspaper, Joseph had submitted an article, big article. You can read it. It's in church history. But all of it was not published. Matter of fact, very little of it was published. So he writes a response. He says, "Dear sir," he's talking to Mr. Seton, "I was somewhat disappointed in receiving my paper with only a part of my letter inserted in it. The letter which I wrote you for publication, I wrote by the commandment of God." Can it be any plainer? Joseph was following what Heavenly Father told him to do. Now, I'm going to show you just one part which affects us for North America. The Book of Mormon is a record of the forefathers of our western tribes of Indians, our Algonquins. By it, we learn that our western tribes of Indians are descendants from that Joseph who was sold into Egypt, and that the land of America is a promised land unto them. Now, he didn't say Americas. He didn't say Western Hemisphere. America. America. Okay. And then, of course, the big one for me has always been the letter to Emma, which I first saw in 1989, crossing the plains of the Nephites, wandering over the mounds of the once beloved people of the Lord, picking up their bones and skulls as proof of its divine authenticity, signed Joseph Smith, Jr. Well, he just crossed the heartland of the Hopewell people. Hopewell. And these are things we hardly ever talk about. ZELPH Mound. It's one of my favorites. When Joseph first spotted this, I don't have time to read you the whole account, but when he first spotted this, he said a 3-tiered stone altar was standing atop this mound. That's what caught his attention, because he says it was built after the ancient order. Now, right there, how would Joseph know that? He would know that because he's had teachers coming from beyond the veil, and he's seen these ancient altars. He just gave it away right there in what he said. I have seen this. It's an ancient altar built after that very sacred order, a 3-layered stone. And he'll address that again when he's at Adam on Ammon, not at the place of prayer, but at the place of sacrifice, where Adam and Eve actually dwelt and built their altar. You'll find it again there in that part of the church history. But let's go on. All of the books of history of the church before 1948 will not have these yellow highlighted passages in them. They have been removed. So if you get 1940 edition and forward, you'll have the correct stuff. It was put back in. Thank goodness for that. ZELPH was a warrior and a chieftain of the great prophet Onondagas, who was known from the hill Cumorah or the eastern sea to the Rocky Mountains. Well, what body of water sits right on top of Cumorah? Lake Ontario. For me, that's got to be my eastern sea. He was killed in the battle by the arrow found among his ribs during the last great struggle of the Lamanites and Nephites. It was, however, quoted correctly as written by the prophet and here given in volume 6 of the Times and Seasons of January 6, 1846. That's when it was corrected. Okay. Illinois archaeologists came to the ZELPH Mound, started in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they did trenches through it. And the first time they did it, they dated it 250 AD, plus or minus 100 years. They came back a second time, and they tightened up their dig and their data, and they dated it to 350 to 380 AD. During what? The last great struggle of the Nephites and Lamanites. Brothers and sisters, this is spot on. And the work is not being done by the church or by any LDS people. So nobody can point a finger that we're planting to deceive. They're pulling out this information for us. And it's there. All we have to do is to be aware of it. And of course, 1938, city of Manti is identified in the Kirtland Camp March. The camp passed through Huntsville, Randolph County, which has been appointed as one of the stakes of Zion, and is the ancient site of the city of Manti. Well, this happens to be south of what we've pegged for Zarahemla in Iowa. And in the Book of Mormon, Manti does lie in a southerly direction from the city of Zarahemla. Samuel D. Tyre writes, September 25, 1838, we passed through Huntsville County, seat of Randolph County. This is the ancient site of the city of Manti, which is spoken of in the Book of Mormon. Of course, they're getting this from Joseph, rolling off Joseph. Joseph is just spouting and talking because he's seeing, he's understanding. Everything is open to him. I just love it. And of course, Doctrines of Salvation, Joseph F., that's where the reference is noted. And then, of course, the Wentworth letter has many things, but this one is my favorite. The principal nation of the second race fell in battle towards the close of the 4th century. The remnant are the Indians. Now, Joseph is in Illinois. He's in Nauvoo. He's alive. The remnant are the Indians that now inhabit this country. Now, we have this problem going on right now, do we not? When you say country, how do you have a country if you have no borders? Get my drift? Country, USA, noun, nation with its own government, occupying a particular territory, state, nation, sovereign state, kingdom, realm, territory. But for all these to exist, you have to have a border. Simple. Border. And Joseph says that's where he's standing. Again, another good shot for North America. And then I just want to mention letter 7. What's funny about letter 7, I published this, it's in my first book, but the person I got this from, on the top of the page, it says author unknown. And yet it was so good, I published it. But I'm glad Jonathan found it and brought all this information to light, because it's extremely important to identify Hill Cumorah for New York. Okay? Now I want to spill over into Nauvoo area with Joseph regarding the temples. Mosiah, of course, he identifies the temple, that it had a wall all the way around it. One of the best ones that we find here is the Cedar Bank Works. You can see the walls. You can see the black area, that's the ditch that put the walls up, and of course there's the water on the one side, and it did go all the way up to the brown rumply line. So there's a temple plot. You can see the platform, and it has ramps, no staircase. Now, if you've bought the first book from Joseph Smith Papers, in the back in your addendum, you'll have this map right here. But the whole area where Zarahemla, I feel, resided was actually meant to be a Native American reservation. It's called the Half-Breed Tract. I don't know how they got it away from the Indians, but somebody did, and it was passed along, and eventually Joseph was able to purchase that land. Now, this is 1839. All the turmoil is taking place up in Daviess County and Caldwell County. Saints are pouring in from Independence. They don't have a lot of money. They've lost their second and third homes. People have been killed. The saints are hurting financially big time. Yet Joseph found a way. The red star on the right, that's Nauvoo. You go across to the left, that's the temple site that I'm going to show you, I've identified. But all that black area, Joseph was able to purchase. And if it wouldn't have been for the breakup of the church, we would still own all that property. But it got lost after the Civil War due to courthouses and things being burned. But anyway, that's significant that he bought all it up. It had to have some importance. What did Joseph know? Well, then we go from 1839 and we go up to January of 1841. Let my servant George, and my servant Lyman, and my servant Snyder, and others build a house unto my name, which one as my servant Joseph shall show unto them upon the place which he shall show unto them also, which is the Nauvoo temple location. Down to 42. I will show unto my servant Joseph all these things pertaining to this house, and the priesthood thereof, and the place whereon it shall be built. And ye shall build it on the place where you, Joseph, have contemplated building it. So Joseph's already picked a spot. Of course, he's going to ask Father, is this the spot? But he's already picked it. And for that is the spot which I have chosen for you to build it. So Joseph knew beforehand. And if he knew that, what did he know about other things that we just don't have any record of? And then, of course, just 2 months later, 1841 of March, D&C 125, let them build up a city unto my name upon the land opposite the city of Nauvoo. Let the name of Zarahemla be named upon it. For me, this was another dead giveaway. There had to be something on the west side of the Mississippi across from Nauvoo. And that's when I went searching. 2011, some friends of mine goaded me into going over there. I did not want to go. And I've told you this before because I find things. And I said, if I find something, what in the world am I going to do? I won't have any money to buy it. It's going to drive me crazy because I know it's there. It's really there as far as I'm concerned. And I was reluctant to go, but I did. And when I walked into this, I came in from the west side. I came around the corner there in the bottom, and as you look across there where the letter E is for east, you'll see an opening. Well, standing in the corner on the west side, I could see right through that opening, and I could look right through and see the Nauvoo Temple. And then I looked south, and I could see a berm, just like in Ohio. And I looked to the east, and that berm came all the way across. The berm in the west has been hurt badly by plowing, but you can still see it today. And then even if you go beyond the west, there's a second berm that is in very good shape. It's over 6 feet high. Good shape. It looks just like Ohio. On the north side, this complex actually extended into those trees. And I know there's stuff in there, but the guy won't sell that part. Okay? That'd be later, maybe. So anyway, I got a guy come out named Charlie Christensen, and he shot this with his equipment, resistivity, and he nailed it. He found this whole thing, he laid it out, and I showed this picture up on top because that's what it looks like in Ohio, and he thought these were doorways, and as soon as I saw that, I knew these were ramps. These were the openings of the ramps. He outlined them perfectly. And then if you look from the sky, this is taken with a drone, so it's a little distorted, but marked out all 4 corners in red, and where the blue arrow points, that's the northeast corner. When I bring Dr. Shares down, which you'll see his work in a minute, we pounded 3 2-foot iron rods into the ground and even beyond the surface, at least 8 or 10 inches, so that no matter what we did, every time we come back here, we want to survey or do any work, especially in archaeologically, for the moon and the sun, we can always get exactly on the same spot. And so we marked that in the northeast corner. Notice the red dot off to the side. Charlie, we're standing there, and he says, Wayne, he said, now he called this inside. He said there was wood in here, and that was incorrect, and we'll talk about that in a minute. What he was picking up was clay, still organic material. But on this red dot to the far, he says there's calcium in the ground. He says, gotta be bone. So I went with my shovel. I just took 1 scoop, and just below the sod surface, I dug up the bones of a deer. So that's how good his resistivity is. He identified it, he called it calcium, and by golly it was bones of a deer. And that was pretty impressive. Now, Dr. Rood, the archaeologist that helped us with the first dig, the big dig, he called me up 3 months after we had been there and told me, he said, Wayne, there's a hill beneath your rectangle. There's a hill. Well, the minute he said that, I knew it was a mound because I understood somewhat about Hopewell structure. And we found out that the mound is primarily constructed of sand. The top indicated is 5 feet down from the surface. That's what Charlie called, and we verified that. And it's got a 1 to 2 inch cap of clay covering the mound. We saw the clay go by. The clay was interpreted by the instrumentation as wood. Clay is organic material. At the predetermined depth of 21 to 22 feet, we have a level 2-inch clay base or a floor. These measurements were predetermined by electronic survey May of 11 by Charlie Christensen with his H3 tech. Both deposits were found to be accurate. The clay cap was interpreted as wood, which is incorrect. Question: can we find other Hopewell Mound examples to explain the buried clay cap and the sand mound? And the answer is yes, we can. But before we get there, so that you understand fully, that green stripe, that is the surface of the ground. I'm going to show this right here. Okay? That is the surface. The platform mound with the ramps would have been sitting right on top of this. And I'm going to drop in a Photoshop so you can see, get some idea. Okay? Platform mound on top of that layer of earth. Underneath that, a mound built for some reason, for some sacred purpose, some ritual, which they did. They also did it in Newark. The Newark mounds on the observation and at the Great Eagle have sand mounds underneath them. Hopewell. It's something that they did. We don't understand the full question of why, but that's what they did to make it special. So there it is. Now you notice this is the rectangle. It appears to be, if you look at the tree line on the north, it looks like, well, it's not in the center, it's off. Reason it's off, as I told you before, this complex goes into the trees. And I'm sure in some way it would have been balanced. But notice the corner, northeast corner, is looking through that opening spot. There's the sand mound, and now we're going to put a platform mound right on top of the whole thing. That's that. That's how it would have been. We know that this mound has been completely plowed off the surface because we soil sampled 50 times all around it. And we found the same samples of soil, but they're always in different layers. It's like 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 3. The sand, it's mixed because of plowing. That sand came from this mound that is now spread all over. And this is a 15-acre site, just so you know. And of course, that's the northeast corner. That's where we shot the temple. And we'll see that just in a minute. And here is our clean sand in the Hopewell Mounds. I want to move on because I want to make sure I get all the way to the end here. I'm not going to read that. But again, in Dr. Scherer's, he says, therefore, the light yellow sand anomaly near Station 1, which is our northeast corner, the root foundation of an ancient light yellow mound, it could have been used at one time to set the 18.6-year lunar calendar needed to predict eclipses. It is also interesting that today, Dave Weir, my astronomer friend and colleague, told me that researchers are finding that yellow sand mounds are related to lunar alignments. And then here's another one here. Episodes of mound construction in which multiple layers of sand and clay serve to cover the remains of sacred buildings and surfaces suggest ceremonial cycles of worlds of renewal in which older polluted surfaces were replaced with new clean ones, reference noted. Okay, I sent Mark Harvey into church history department with this question to find out, did Joseph Smith make a plat map of its location? Does the church have any record of any kind that supports this? That's the question that Mark asked the church historians. And the answer was, now as for your question, there are instances where a planned temple for Zarahemla, Iowa was mentioned, but we have no record of an actual site ever being picked, no maps that show a site. I asked members of the Joseph Smith papers to see if there were something they had discovered while working on the project, but there is no known record of a temple site ever being picked or dedicated in that area of Iowa. I have attached a brief example of some brethren discussing the possibility of a temple. It comes with the biographical sketches of Edward Phillips, manuscript number 11215, which the church has. I have underlined the section where he makes a brief mention of a temple being built in Zarahemla. This is Wilford Woodruff. He's receiving this message, and he's asked this message, I should say, from Brother Phillips. I was standing by the temple talking to Brother Woodruff, and he pointed out a spot to me on the opposite side of the river, about 1.5 miles above Montrose, and he said there'd be a city and a temple built there, and the place would be called Zarahemla. Montrose to the temple site is 1.5 miles as a crow flies. This photo right here is supplied by Dean Sessions. Lovely aerial looking straight across to the temple site, Nauvoo to the Iowa side. And I love this one here. Language used by him during his forced absence from home, this is Joseph, during the trouble of 1842, pays a touching and fitting tribute to the faithfulness of his noble woman and affectionate wife. How glorious were my feelings when I met that faithful and friendly band on the night of the 11th, on Thursday, on the island at the mouth of the slough between Zarahemla and Nauvoo. Here's a map before the Keokuk Dam. Notice the islands. Nobody's ever seen the islands. They're all underwater today. So we're going to focus in on that. Now, if you can see that, you see where it says Big Slough? Can you see that? I can't tell on the screen. I can't see the screen. Can you see that? Okay. Well, right there, somewhere on those two spots is where Joseph was when Emma and friends came across to bring him food and probably some clothing. And that blue one down in the corner, that's the temple site. And Joseph says, I'm standing here at the mouth between Zarahemla and Nauvoo. And there it is there. And there's your temple, straight across. Watch my time. Okay, now, here's the fun stuff. Saturday, March 18th, 2015, I got to check out Dr. Scherer's theory, because when he sit on that northeast corner, he did what's called sunshots. He looked back at me and he says, Wayne, he says, on the equinox, spring and fall, the sun is going to rise right behind your Mormon church. And he asked me, he says, what was on that hilltop there before you guys built your temple? I said, I have no idea. If anybody did, it would come up in a pioneer writing. There's no way to get that. But I want you to look at real close at the tower. Look at that odd bump sticking over in the corner. That plays a key part. That's the water tower for Nauvoo. Just a little bump sticking out there, okay? right there. That's the water tower. So we did our shots. We started on the 19th because clouds and rain were forecast for the 20 to 21st, and that's when we really need to shoot. So we shot the 19th. We had a day ahead of time, and this is what we got. There's our sunrise. Now we're in Iowa, looking all the way across to the Nauvoo Temple, and we're watching. Now the sun is up there at 7 a.m., but we can't see it because of the curvature, all right, in the horizon. But it moves. It looks like the sun is just absolutely rocketing by. It's really cool. Of course, it's the Earth turning. But if you've never done this, you really should do this. It's really awesome. And then we said, well, can we duplicate? We should be able to duplicate. If we can duplicate, then things are right. But our problem was we need to get to a high place on the Illinois side to shoot the actual time of sunrise, and then we still need to put people in Iowa to do what we just did already in the spring. Well, the tallest buildings in Nauvoo is the Catholic Church steeple, the water tower, and what else? A temple. We got in the temple tower. 2 of us. I won't say who. It'll be incriminating. I don't want to get him in trouble. But we got in to shoot the fall equinox. See the flash in the bottom? That's from the camera. The guy's already starting to shoot. It's ready to happen. Bango. Sunrise. We're in the Nauvoo Temple Tower. All the way. Tippy top. Okay? And the guys had to wear their whites. So they're up there. Keep things kosher. And then I'm going to draw a line here. Notice how the tower blooms out to the one side. See, it's off. And that's what we see on the other side. We can see that bump sticking out. And right here, it just shows it. It's right on. And that's the angle of the sun. It's going to take off. Now, this is what we got. I'm on the Iowa side. You can see the sunrise right there. See, they can see it. We can't see it. But when we first see it, it's already moved up only 3 minutes. And it's off. It's tearing up that far south side of the temple. That's it, moving pretty fast. But we were excited. We had a good time. So again, we show this here. DNC 125 and 3, I believe it's the real deal. We've got the temple. We got the location. We raised the money from good people like you. We bought the place. We own it. It's safe. I will be there again this summer. Excuse me, doing some small work. But to close, final comments. I always like to show this. Dr. Nibley. The Book of Mormon is a history of related primitive church, and one may well ask what kind of remains the Nephites would leave us from their more virtuous days. A closer approximation to the Book of Mormon picture of Nephite culture is seen in the earth and palisade structures of the Hopewell and Adena culture areas than in the later stately piles of stone in Mesoamerica. Stone was only mentioned once in the Book of Mormon. But wood, it's all wood, okay? Look carefully, you'll see it. It's real easy. And this right here, I got to, this is a good story. Tammy, where are you? There's Tammy. Put that in. Probably 2 weeks ago, I get an email. Tammy has been on our tours a couple of times. And she sends me 4 or 5 just riveting pieces of information out of a book by Parley Pratt called Voice of Warning. And I said, I've got that book. How come I didn't see this? Well, I did find it. And when I did find it, I realized I bought it before 1989. I had read it when I had 2 Cumorahs in my mind, and it didn't mean anything. It's just that, well, that's nice. So I know the old Cumorahs in, New York State. So it wasn't impressive. But this, Parley is telling how Moroni has abridged the record, and then, and I quote, he deposits them carefully in the earth on a hill, which is then called Cumorah, so he names it, but is situated in where? Ontario County. Well, that's awesome. And then he gives us the township, Manchester. And then he tells us in New York State and in North America. I mean, that just says it all. Right there. It says it all. You can't get any plainer than that. unless Moroni showed up and says, this is it. All right? Now, I'm going to close this last slide here. I've done this before. Many of you have seen this, but I want you to think. When I read about the Promised Land, it's my understanding that the Garden of Eden is there. It's my understanding that Adam lived there. It's my understanding that Noah lived there, and also Adam is there, starting out. And Enoch also walked the Promised Land. When I read my Book of Mormon, it's a nation of Gentiles. It's going to be a land of liberty. It's a land to be a free nation. It's a land where the new temple of Jerusalem is to be built, identified in Missouri. No kings are allowed upon the land. Nations of the world will flow into it. And it will be protected against all other nations. So I ask you plainly, if this hasn't helped, if you haven't figured it out, I got one more clue for the Promised Land. After this, I can't help you. Is that fair? There it is.